Okay, so here's Star Wars Episode VII, the franchise version. Start off with a shot of Endor, the Ewoks are having a little party, it's night, campfires going, and then comes this loud metallic noise coming towards them. And they're all playing music, but the sound gets louder and louder, and all of a sudden there's this big metallic shadow looming over them. And this shadow reaches down with its claw and it grabs three Ewoks and it squeezes them and they make their protest to try and stop this big thing from crushing them. Which it doesn't. It crushes them, drops them to the ground, picks up one more Ewok, which goes yub yub. And of course the Malclaw crushes that much more, assimilates some of the language out of it, and eventually hears a few more yub yubs, crushes it, and drops to the ground, and thinks to himself, Death Star. Interesting, but too small for my purposes. And then of course the other shadows come in and there's this big mass of robots that wipe out the Ewoks, and Endor, no more. Go back, you have Leia and Luke and Han, and they're all happy little campers, all having a grand old time, everything is fine. And Luke is sitting there talking to Leia, and all of a sudden they feel this strong force of, all these people dying, all these Ewoks have disrupted the force. And Luke realizes he has to go and check out what's going on over there. So he grabs C-3PO and R2-D2 and they head over to Endor, check out the Ewok situation, and realize they're all dead. There's nothing left. He searches, he senses one Ewok might still be alive, and he goes over to him and he checks the little Ewok, and he squeaks out a few noises, and he turns to C-3PO, and C-3PO is, of course, like, it seems highly irrational, Master, but it seems to me that the Ewok said, Decepticon. And you get the idea. You've got your John Williams music coming through, you've got your trapezoid little text scrawl before all this talking about how everything's fine, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's Transformers meets Star Wars. Because why not? So, Luke, he goes back to Leia and the Royal Council and he explains what all has happened and all the trouble that's about to occur because of these Decepticons that they've never heard of. And then all of a sudden the wall comes crashing down and Megatron comes in and there's Starscream and there's Soundwave. Like, oh look, we're Decepticons, we're gonna crush you all and we're gonna rule the world and rawr. Of course, they try and fight back, but they're big giant robots, what are you gonna do? Luke focuses really hard and gets a little help from his sister, and eventually he uses the Force to throw Megatron against the wall, which smashes him. And he's shocked, and how can this be happening, and what secret powers do they have? And Starscream, being Starscream, freaks out, and goes, retreat! And all the Decepticons fly away, and Megatron's like, oh great, I have no backup now. So he flies off as well. Of course, Han is not going to take this very well. About the same time he finds out Megatron can fly, he's heading out towards the hangar to get the Millennium Falcon because when all else fails, fly a big outdated ship at it. So he goes and grabs the Millennium Falcon, he tries to catch all these Decepticons flying away in their little ships, and he grabs the remaining pilots and the ground crew, and they're all going after them. So you've got the Millennium Falcon leading all these ships, and they're trying to catch them, and the Decepticons have this big air race, a nice big fight scene for Act 1. And Han Solo Millennium Falcon almost blows up Starscream, which, not the worst thing. But Megatron's upset that one of his old generals is being attacked, so he turns around and he blasts the Millennium Falcon, and you get a nice little nerd moment of the Millennium Falcon being blown up into little pieces of shrapnel and careening into a big fireball to the ground as it crashes. But of course, Han and Chewie both managed to eject beforehand, and Chewie wraps himself around Han so that he takes most of the brunt of the fall. So Chewie breaks a few bones, but they're okay for the most part. Both the sides are asking themselves, what just happened here? Princess Leia, she has her royal forces, and she wants more information on who the Sentinelese people were. And Megatron's upset that there is some force working on them, and he wants to know more about this. So both camps are off in their own little worlds trying to figure out what the Sentinel just happened here. Luke, being the good little Jedi that he is, he goes off to a little quiet place with R2-D2 and C-3PO and tries to contemplate, and he thinks to the Force, and he finds a, like at the end of Episode 6, you've got your ghost Yoda and your ghost Ben and your ghost Anakin, and he sort of communes with them, tries to figure out what to do, and they sort of give him the idea that he should trust new allies or new forces. And so at that moment, he starts to see little meteors streaming towards him out of the sky, and they seem to be coming right at him, and C-3PO, of course, being C-3PO, was like, Master, I feel we should leave. This seems unsafe. But Luke is a little bit braver than, C-3PO. So he stands there and lets the hood fall off of his head and has a lightsaber in his hand, and as these large meteors are coming closer and closer, lights up his lightsaber, and all around him collide about a dozen meteors, which of course turn out to be Autobots landing there. And the voice of Peter Cullen, of course, comes in and says, Welcome, human, I mean you no harm. I bring you greetings, I come to warn you of a grave threat. Which are the Decepticons, of course, and that's how the Autobots meet the Star Wars folks. Now, Princess Leia, being the smart gal that she is, decides it's a great idea to work with the Autobots, and, let's put our forces together, and let's all just make this all work out just fine. Han, not such a big fan of the idea. The one piece of technology he trusted the most has just been crashed and obliterated by these people, so he's not about to team up with a bunch of robots. Pretty much the only piece of tech he trusts right now is his blaster. It's a gun, he can fire a gun, that makes sense. Some sentient robot he's never heard of before. This guy is a hustler from the word go. He works with thieves and backstabbers and bounty hunters. So he's not about to trust some giant robot thing he's never met before, let alone humans, so he has a hard enough time with robots. So he sort of grumbles off and goes and figures that mankind can take care of mankind and he doesn't need some robot trying to tell him what to do. But there are still some pairings to have fun with. R2-D2 and Optimus are quite the happy-go-lucky, chummy pair. R2-D2 has never seen a robot so big, so magnanimous, so willing to take charge of humans and robots. And here's this big, massive robot who's calling all the shots, and R2-D2 has an idol to look up to, a big brother. So you have these little shots of the little R2 following around this big ankle of Optimus Prime. It's very cute. R2-D2 is a little conflicted, doesn't know whether to choose between Master Luke or his new shiny idol, but we'll get to that sometime later. And of course, C-3PO and Ratchet, they're all palsies, they're besties for life now, because they have an idea that there might be some outside sources they can get a hold of, because C-3PO has all the knowledge of the land, and Ratchet has all this knowledge of history and technology that's gone on, so they come together, and they sort of come up with this idea, what if there is a way to transport to other worlds? Because there are rumors that once upon a time we could travel through portals to other places. What if those are still around? Could we use that to help out our case? So Princess Leia assigns C-3PO and Ratchet to go check that out. At the same time, the Decepticons, they're back at the base. They're starting to, set up some things. Megatron thinks the Death Star is too small, so he wants a Death Nova. He wants something that's made to explode, and he's going to blow up whatever he can. At the same time, it's an energy collector. So it's collecting all what they consider energon from the universe closer to them, so they don't have to go searching for it anymore. Soundwave has been searching the different spectrums and what's going on in the universe, black matter, quantum matter, whatever you want to call it, and he finds out that there's the Force, and that this Force, if they can contain it, if they can get a hold of it, the Force is so much more powerful than just normal energon. They can have greater weapons, they can have more destruction. If they can contain the Force in these little energon cubes, they're basically going to be the worst thing in the universe. Megatron is like, great, go for it, terrific. But just, don't let the good guys embarrass me like that ever again. Now, the tech war is officially in full force. You've got Princess Leia sanctioning Autobots and C-3PO to go check out stuff over here, and then Megatron is over here with Soundwave and trying to figure out this whole spectrum thing. And Soundwave is pretty sure he has an energy collector that he can make work. So he turns it on, he aims it at this little quadrant of the Force, and he tries to pull out a concentrated, a little chunk of energy. And what he gets is the Emperor. Because the Emperor's not going to stay dead. I mean, what fun is that to just have him be a ghost that doesn't know? We need the Emperor to be a bad guy, so he's collected into an energon cube, but he's really, really powerful. So of course, all the Decepticons want to be imbued. They want to sort of ingest all that power that the Emperor has. no one more so than Megatron. Megatron grabs in and tries to ingest him and replace the Allspark and Energon. It doesn't work. It pretty much just overwhelms his system, and he can't take the impact, and he throws it from him. Starscream tries to pick it up, and Starscream can't handle all the power, and he throws it out, and it lands at the feet of Devastator. The Constructicons in their big massive robot form. Since there are 6 robots, and it spreads out the Emperor's power between 6 different robots, they can handle that sort of power infused into their system. And the Emperor, since, Devastator is normally, that big robot is pretty small, pretty dense, trying to share all of his brain power with 6 different robots, the Emperor can overthrow that, and so now the Emperor is in charge of Devastator. He actually now calls himself Emperor Devastator, and he's the one out to wreak mayhem. He's got this big robot body. He's a happy camper. He's larger than life in all kinds of aspects now. And he actually has a plan for a bigger weapon. At the same time, right before they pulled the Emperor into this little cube, C-3PO and Ratchet have figured out a way to get this portal to work. It's actually the Stargate. So they've got their little uniforms, they've got their dialing system, they put in the 6 chevrons and the home chevron, and they dial it up, and great, it opens. C-3PO goes through to what he thinks is a benign world. There are horses there, there are bears there, they're all colorful and friendly. What could possibly go wrong? So C-3PO goes through. At that same time, they collect and release the Emperor and the Devastator and Megatron and Starscream and all that. So, the corruption of the Force from the Emperor being released is so strong that it shoots throughout that area, and some of that corruption travels through the Stargates. And C-3PO has to close the Stargate so he can open the Stargate again to leave. So just as he closes the Stargate, the bad energy goes through it and it infects the denizens of that land, unbeknownst to him. As soon as that happens, the Stargate closes, he opens it again, and C-3PO leaves. But what he's left behind are My Little Ponies, which have been overtaken by the Emperor's dark source. And now, the My Little Ponies are evil, and the only ones that can stop them are the Care Bears! And they have to use their Care Bear stare to fight an endless battle between My Little Ponies and Care Bears, and Care Bears, and My Little Ponies. Fight, 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 fight! Coming next summer to a theater near you. The franchises just keep on going. I know, but it's all in good fun, so don't worry about it. C-3PO comes back to visit Princess Leia, tells her, okay, it seemed to work great. And at the same time, Ratchet thinks he's figured out just where this other planet is. He's been doing the research, they've got the Stargate to work. This is a planet we think has the best shot of helping us out. It's what All About Legend says works. There's an actual gate. There's no gates for Cybertron anywhere near Cybertron, so we can't really go back home and get more Transformer help. We gotta find some other help out here. So what they do is they confer, get the whole royal group all talking, and Princess Leia's like, okay, great, fine. You get 5 people. You get Lando, because, why not? You got Han Solo, you got R2-D2, C-3PO, and of course, you're gonna have our happy little friend Chewie. I mean, yeah, his arms are broken, but he's a fast healer. He's not gonna leave Han to go check out stuff by himself. Why not? No Transformers, just the Star Wars 5 going off to check out this land, because they hear that there's a rumor about these machines they can use. Not robots, not self-sentient, robots that they can pilot themselves, and Han is all for that, so he's leading the charge to go check that out. They go through the Stargates, and their adventure begins over there. At the same time, Luke is bored, well not bored, but restless. He wants to solve what he can by himself. He's a Jedi, he has all these Padawans beneath him looking up to him, he should be doing something. So he decides to form a little spy group. He and Optimus have been talking about what Megatron is capable of, what the Emperor is capable of, and they both realize, you know what? They're just as likely to blow up this entire planet as they are to look at either of us ever again. So we should stop this now. Let's not wait and see what happens. Let's just cut them off right now and just stop this whole thing. So, Luke assembles his little group of little Padawans and grabs the fastest, sneakiest little Autobot cars and jetpacks they can acquire, and they head off towards the Decepticon world. And they're all covert and what have you. What they don't realize is that the whole time they were talking over this plan with Princess Leia is that there were a few people, well, machines, people, call them what you will, but they were eavesdropping on this entire conversation because, what is a war without spies? And the main spy was, of course, Soundwave's little cohort, Razorbeak, who was flying up in the rafters of this. You've seen the pictures of how big the Imperial Palace is with the royals. You saw that last scene in Episode VI. They've got those big curved arches. There's plenty of room for Razorbeak to hide up there and listen and record everything they say and go back to Soundwave and report. So he'll report to Megatron, so Megatron will know all the plans. And that's exactly what happens. But what Razorbeak doesn't catch is that there's another spy in there, and that Boba Fett, who's still, a little mad about what happened in Episode 6 with the whole Luke, Leia, Han thing, but he's not really a huge fan of the Emperor, so he's our flip-flopper. He could go either way. Whichever side he thinks will win and give him the greatest reward, that's the side he's going to go to. So he's just sitting in the background, he's hiding, he doesn't want to be seen, he just wants all the information so that he can pick the right side and have a profit, because he's a bounty hunter and he's a backstabber, so that's what he's going to do. So, Razorbeak goes back, tells Megatron all the stuff that's going to happen, and Megatron decides, you know what, we're not going to wait for the Death Nova to be completed. We're going to go attack them now. They're starting to make plans, they're ticking me off, let's just wipe them out right now. And this is at the same time that Luke has this little group over there, and they're listening, and they're checking out all this stuff, and they're finding out that, oh, yeah, Emperor Devastator, that's a bad thing. We should be afraid of that. Oh, and they've got Energon, and they've got the Force-empowered Energon. You know what? We're in serious trouble. Let's go tell them how much trouble we're in. So they all escape. But what they don't know is that Boba Fett was with their little group the whole time, and he had snuck in to the innermost high-security areas of Megatron's area, dressed up as a stormtrooper, the old trope that Han and Luke did. He's going to do that too. And because he is Boba Fett, he manages to take out the two guards in the high-security area. He takes out Ramjet, he takes out Razorbeak. He basically, does his sneaky thing. He uses some acid, a localized EMP, little technical tricks, and he just knocks those two out. Regrets it a little bit because, well, now he can't use the localized EMP because they'll be ready for it now. Decepticons are going to shield against that sort of thing. But he gets what he wants. He finds a protocol Allspark, and he knows it's worth something. He hasn't an exact idea on what, but he knows this is worth taking, and he sneaks the Sentinel out of there, headed back towards the Stargate that he's heard about, because he has a plan for the Stargate. At the same time, you've got you've got Han and his little group, his 5 little Stargate 5, we'll call them, and they're over there, and they're in this desolated land, so they're not finding a whole lot of stuff to work with here. You've got your swampland, you've got your dust, you've got your broken down walls. It doesn't look too promising. So R2-D2 does a scan of the area, and he checks, a few miles over here, there's a big castle, let's go check that out. So the Stargate 5, they go over, and they find out, oh, yes, there is an abandoned castle. There's no one alive, but there's a castle, so that's got to be some hope, right? And inside, they find a robot device, so some transport that they can work with, and in 4 surrounding areas, there are also transports that seem very similar, so they go and they check out these transports, and R2-D2 does some look, and Chewie does some look, and C-3PO does some, and they find it's very interesting. You go back to the main planet with Leia and Luke, and they're all freaking out. It's like, what are we going to do? And of course, that's when Megatron decides to attack. He's got Emperor Devastator crushing down the walls. They've got their fancy weapons blowing things up. Princess Leia and Luke decide to take to the air with the Autobots and what jetpacks they have, because for some reason, not all Autobots have jetpacks. I still don't know why, but I guess they share, I don't know, conserving energy, whatever. So they take to the air, Optimus Prime and the ground troops and the guys who like driving in little car form, they're all trying to attack what used to be stormtroopers, and there's this big fight because you've got Emperor Devastator just wiping out everything he comes across. And it's just one nice big epic fight scene. Back at the Stargate, Boba Fett has returned, he has his Allspark, and guarding the Stargate, he finds Ratchet and Bumblebee. And as much as we all like Bumblebee, he is not the best fighter. So Boba Fett takes over Bumblebee. He tells Ratchet that he's going to override his systems, his operating, whatever you want to call it. He's going to take over Bumblebee or kill Bumblebee if Ratchet doesn't do exactly what he says. And Boba Fett just wants to get out of there with his Allspark. He doesn't care where, so Ratchet dials up a random world. It just so happens to be Earth. And Boba Fett takes the Allspark and he jumps to the Stargate. Bumblebee's free, he has this little zapper, and he zaps after Boba Fett, and he nails him pretty well. He's not going to die, of course, because what fun would that be? But he does damage the Allspark, so this little protocol, this little beta test that they thought might replace the Allspark, is now damaged. And it's on Earth, and it's sparking mature enough energy, and just before it implodes, it sends out this wave. Now the wave doesn't turn them into Transformers, it doesn't grant these machines sentient power, but it does take about a dozen vehicles and give them a special morphing capability. And that's where we get Mask coming into the picture with these fancy high-tech vehicles and these Americans that find the vehicles, and they're gonna save the day. But the Fast and Furious crew decide they're the coolest vehicles around, and they're the toughest guys around, so they should have these cool vehicles so they can rob banks or save a Maserati or whatever mission they're on this movie. And that brings you our new franchise trilogy coming to you winter of next year in 3D. The first movie is going to be Mask versus Fast and Furious, sort of fighting for control, but you know that Mask is going to get the vehicles eventually, right? I mean, they don't wear t-shirts quite as tight, so they must be the good guys. And then the second movie will be The Expendables, because why have big guns when you can turn your cars into big guns? So it's going to be Fast and the Furious group versus the Expendables group versus the Mask group, all of them vying for control of these machines. And then the third movie comes in and we bring the Transformers element back in, we bring a little more Decepticon element in there, so you have the Expendables and the Decepticons teaming up to fight against Mask and the Fast and Furious crew, while at the same time, through all three of these movies, Boba Fett is making these plans, these machinations, just waiting for Boba Fett's turn to sneak in and do what's right by Boba Fett. So, stay tuned for that franchise opportunity to really see Mask come into that 21st century. Meanwhile, back in this whole Star Wars Transformers fights, obviously they're getting their butts kicked by Emperor Devastator because it's two of the most destructive creatures combined. It's not a good thing. Oh, and it turns out that the entire time they were back with Megatron, Emperor Devastator was working on this big, powerful weapon. It turns out, not surprisingly, to be the biggest lightsaber ever created. A nice big nerd moment is seeing the skyscraper that's basically the size of a broadcast tower, and when it lights up, it blinds everyone within the radius. You can't see anything but this bright, green, glowing lightsaber. You can feel the heat coming off of it. You can hear it hum as it through the air. Everyone on the battlefield can hear this thing, can feel this thing, and is freaking afraid of this gigantic lightsaber held by Devastator, powered by the Emperor. It's not a good thing. So you can imagine they're just about to lose when in comes 5 lions, and you've got all the different Star Wars characters powering a different lion from Voltron. And of course, the lions, they come in and they bite a few Decepticons in half, and they decide, you know what, let's form a giant robot. R2-D2 told us about this thing, and C-3PO said, let's all form Voltron, and I'll form the head, and I'll form the... Because really, the only person that can possibly form the head, the only one that can be the Red Lion, is Han Solo, because he's the only one gruff enough to actually say it cool anytime someone says, and I'll form the head! It just sounds silly. But if you have Han Solo saying, and I'll form the head, there might actually be some gravitas to it. We're hoping Harrison Ford will help us out with that. So he has to be the Red Ranger. Or I'm sorry, Power Rangers. No Power Rangers here. He's going to be the Red Lion, It'll be impressive. It'll be scary. Chewie, I think, has to be the foot, just so that instead of saying, I'll form the foot, he can go, oh, and it's just more fun. And R2-D2 can be an arm, say, and that'll be fun too. So you've got Voltron, and you've got Emperor Devastator. The fight is on. I wish I had the toys here. Rah, rah. It's all good fun. He has a lightsaber, but the robots are slower. He has a fiery sword, but he doesn't have the Force. So they're pretty evenly matched, and it's not working out well, this little collision. The Emperor has a slight advantage, but as the Voltron 5, the Stargate 5 are figuring out their robots, they're getting a little more of the upper hand. Luke decides, okay, it's the lightsaber. If you can take out this giant lightsaber that's instilling fear in everyone and slicing through all of these ships and troops, then at least we'll have a shot. So, he focuses, takes a quiet moment, focuses on the Force, ejects from his plane and starts plummeting toward the ground, calls the lightsabers to his hand. It lights up, it's ready to go. He grabs it with both hands because apparently it's so heavy that only like a King Arthur soldier apparently weighs like 100 pounds, these lightsabers. So he grabs onto it with both hands and he's trying not to let go. He's focusing very heavily on the Force, all the while falling faster and faster, reaching terminal velocity as he approaches Emperor Devastator. And about the time the Emperor Devastator is smart enough to turn that black and gray head upward and hear this little whistling sound coming towards him, that's about the time when Luke falls through and cuts the arm off entirely. This Decepticon has been disengaged from Devastator, and the Emperor does not have time to actually go and lift up the lightsaber with the other hand before Voltron comes along and cuts off his hand, and then cuts off his head, and then sticks the fiery sword through his gut. Devastator is done. It's devastated, if you will. It's never going to work again. That sucker is melted and broken and rubble. Never again. And of course, the shock of all this, while the Emperor wasn't Devastator, is enough that it's disrupted him, and the Emperor is no longer corporal. He's back to being ether. He's not a threat. He's gone. Megatron realizes, even with all this new Energon Force power, he's not strong enough to take these guys out. He needs to go back and focus on his original plan of the Death Nova. So, of course, Starscream calls retreat, and Megatron calls retreat, and they go back to lick their wounds, keep working on the Death Nova, and they'll live to fight another day. They've lost this battle, but they still have their big plan in motion. And of course, the Star Wars, the heroes, the Leia, the Luke, like, yay! Way to go, Voltron 5, and way to go, Luke, and way to go, Optimus, and Bumblebee, you, I guess, shot someone. Okay, good for you too, yay! And there you go. You have your big epic fight scene, everyone's doing okay, but there's still something in the back of Luke's mind. He's thinking to himself, what if some Jedi were around back when this Stargate was working the first time? What if some Jedi went through the gate? Or, even on a smaller scale, what if there are some things out there that we can use to fight? Because the Decepticons aren't going anywhere. They're still working on this. They want this new Energon. They want the Force. They're staying put, and the Autobots happily are staying put to help all of these Padawans and Jedi and royal people to figure things out. But what if there are some things out there in the universe that can help us in our fight? And secretly, as Luke tells only Leia, no one else, what if there are more Jedis out there? What if you can find more Jedis and bring them back to their home planet? So Luke takes R2-D2, who agrees to take a little break from worshipping the greatness of Optimus, and go back to his master, and C-3PO, and they go on their separate adventure off to other worlds through the Stargates. Thus endeth Episode 7. Cue the John Williams score, and the credits, and the lights. And thus endeth the first installation of the new franchised Star Wars franchise.